What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well. My name is Mike Dokter. I am the high school girls basketball coach, high school women's basketball coach for the house team out of Muskegon, Michigan, playing with the Michigan Basketball Academy. And we are getting close to the end of the book we've been reading, which is Chop Wood, Carry Water. Making these videos for the new players of the team this year is we'll be starting the sequel, Pound the Stone, coming up during our season at the end of March. And we are almost done. We're going to read chapter 29 and 30 today with some thoughts, and there are 33 chapters in the book, so we're getting down to the end. So hope you're learning a lot. If you're watching this randomly, because these videos are public, and you want to see more, go ahead and click the house playlist link at the bottom, and you can see all the rest of the chapters too. So this is chapter 29 of Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Medcalf. Here we go. Warrior Dial, Chapter 29. A few months and many reps of the can-do list later, John was finally cleared to train fully again. The night before, he was so excited he could barely sleep. The next morning, Akira joined him as they walked the range together. "I'm so excited for you to be back out here shooting, John, and I'm sure you are too." "You've got that right," John nodded, bouncing on his feet as he walked. Akira smiled. "Just remember, excitement is very powerful. It can help you or hurt you. It all depends on how you use it." "What do you mean, Akira?" "Well, there are two concepts I think it's important for me to share with you, and I'm not sure you're even aware of. The first is labeling. How you label your internal feelings makes a massive difference on how you filter the meaning. If you get butterflies in your stomach and your hands start to sweat, you could label that as being nervous and unprepared, or you could label it as being excited and prepared. But rest assured, how you label it is going to directly impact the meaning you give those feelings. A wise man once told me, the words we use to label our experiences are a filter to meaning. The most important thing is rarely what we experience or feel, but rather the meaning we give to the experience or feeling. We can give them beneficial and constructive labels and meaning, or we can give them destructive and unhelpful labels and meaning. Which one we give is up to us. We rarely have full control over the things that happen to us in life, but we do have the power to determine what those events and feelings mean to us. "I never thought of that before," John nodded, understanding. "What's the second concept?" "It's called the Warrior Dial. Think about your Warrior Dial as being from 1 to 10. 1 is ultra stealth mode, barely moving, and 10 is super hyped kamikaze screaming and running into a building with a bomb strapped to them. Every one of us can turn our Warrior Dial up or down depending on the context of the situation and where we are at our best. We would be wise to do so. Think about today. Based off the context of the day and it being your first day back, where do you think you are on the Warrior Dial?" John thought for a second and then answered, "I'm probably at an 8 or a 9. Kira nodded his head in agreement. "And where do you think you need to be at your best and not get re-injured?" John replied, "Honestly, I'm not sure. Growing up, I'd always been taught that you were supposed to get hyped before games by watching movies like Braveheart and listening to upbeat music. But I never really thought about this before." "Then I'm glad we're talking about it now," said Kira. "I think the best samurai archers would tell you that your best shooting will happen at around 4 or 5. If your dial is too high, you are more likely to miss your targets." John nodded, trying to process what he had heard, while simultaneously wondered why he had never learned this growing up in sports. "So how do you turn your Warrior Dial down?" His sensei smiled wide. "I was hoping you would ask. You can turn your Warrior Dial down by doing deep breathing exercises, talking slower, lowering your voice, listening to classical music, and slowing your movements. In fact, many of your teams in the West would benefit from turning down their dial before the, quote, big games and turning it up before the, quote, smaller games. You already know how to turn your Warrior Dial up by watching inspirational movies, listening to upbeat music, and by jumping around. But in my experience, it is more challenging to turn your dial down than it is to turn it up. It will take practice, but you will get the hang of it." John grinned. "Thank you, Sensei. I'm excited to try it out today." Sure enough, as soon as John gripped his bow, a surge of energy flowed through him. Remembering Akira's lessons, he breathed deeply and hummed a slow song. Calming his mind and letting the oxygen in his lungs quieted his nerves. That simple exercise was enough to steady his hand as he notched an arrow. Drew released, sending the arrow slamming into the bullseye. It felt good that all of his mental training was paying off, but it felt even better just to get back on the blocks and be able to chop wood and carry water again. It seemed as if John was finally learning to fall in love with the process of becoming great. All right, this is an extraordinarily important concept. I'll share with you a story of an individual who will remain nameless, but is probably watching this video, who is an extraordinarily intense player. And she's absolutely fantastic. She's a key player on her team. She gets a lot of minutes, and she plays with a high level of intensity. And this individual was having problems at the free throw line. And one of the reasons they were having problems at the free throw line is because after they would get fouled, after just fighting and scrapping and being all intense, going after boards or going after a rebound or getting fouled on a move down low, they would get up to the line and their movements were so hard and so extreme that all of that energy was flowing up, and they would end up hitting the rim or not having a soft shot or not getting the shooter's bounce. So we were working in a one-on-one session, and I watched her shoot a few free throws, and we just had a conversation. And I just said, look, you got to relax. That's the whole point of being at the line. You're here to relax. Your routine is fine, but make the movements softer, make the movements slower. So all of that energy that you have inside of you gets a chance to dissipate before you need to have a touch on your shot. And sure enough, from what I've seen in the games that I've watched this past season, anytime she gets an and one, anytime she's going to the line, her free throw percentage has dramatically gone up. And I'm so super proud of her for applying these lessons. And that's the power of this. I didn't tell her it was from the book. I just noticed what was happening. And it's important to have a warrior dial. It's important to be aware. It's important to be alert. It's important to be intense. But if you have too much of that, you're going to end up having issues where you're not necessarily in control. And you want to try to remain in control at all times. You want to turn that dial up or down. So the warrior dial is a cool thing. So if you are super intense by nature like I am, it makes a lot of sense to try to relax as much as possible. If you're a little bit more passive, your maximum warrior dial may be at, like, for you a 10, but to someone else it's a 4 or 5. That's a fine thing, but you need to know when to turn that up and in what situations that's important. So cool chapter, cool concepts. Hopefully that's helpful. So next, chapter 30, chapter 30. As the years passed, John kept training with focus and perseverance, in cold weather and warm. He kept chopping wood and carrying water. In wind and rain and sun and storms, he kept beating on his craft, focusing on mental training when there was weather too rough to shoot, and shooting for hours each day, every day. And before he knew it, John had nearly spent 10 years at the Samurai community. He was now very close to graduation. One day at dusk, just as the sun was setting, John finished up his shooting when Akira approached, watching his apprentice with great pride. As John finished shooting, he and Akira walked back to the dining hall. As they did, Akira said, "John, you are very close to finishing your training. You will graduate as a samurai archer soon, and then you will dive back into the world. Before you do, there's something I want to share with you." "And what is that, Akira-sensei?" asked John. "I want you to know that when you get back to the world, you will face a unique challenge. You will face the challenge of they." John blinked, curious. "Who are they?" "John, we come out of the womb creating and exploring. But then we start school and we're told to sit down, shut up, and get in line. We are told to behave and color inside the lines. We are told to dream sensibly and to be realistic. You want to know who they are? They are the ones saying all of that. And if you don't obey, if you don't do what they say, they call you disobedient, unstimulated, disturbed, or they diagnose you with ADHD. Then they drug you, all to get you to fit into their nice little box. They call a coach named John Wooden crazy when he tried to run a press for the entire game. They also thought it was crazy that he didn't scout his opponents. Rather, he chose to focus on letting the other team worry about stopping them. The board at Apple ran Steve Jobs out of the company, calling him crazy and reckless. 12 years later, months away from bankruptcy, they came crawling back, begging him to come back and save them. He took Apple from the fringes of bankruptcy to one of the most successful and innovative companies of all time. They wanted to have the man committed who came up with the idea of television. They thought the idea of a 24-hour sports network was stupid and could never work. They called Nelson Mandela a terrorist, and they called Jackie Robinson much worse. Rest assured, they will call you all sorts of names. They will throw down the gauntlet in front of you. They will do everything they can to keep you inside their safe container. But if you put one crab in a bucket, it will crawl out. If you put multiple crabs in a bucket, they will pull each other down every time one starts to crawl out. If a crab continues to try and crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs will break its leg. Unfortunately, John, we live in a society of crabs. But we weren't created to sit still and learn the right answer. We were created to explore, create, love, and learn. Be courageous and never listen to they. Once you break out, they will call you a genius and tell everyone how talented you are. They will try and neatly sweep all of your years of sweat, turmoil, and uncommon persistence under the rug. Why? Because it is so much more comfortable to believe that talent is reserved for the chosen few than it is to work your ever-loving butt off to become the best you are capable of being. And most importantly, please don't try to teach your friends and family the lessons you learned here. That doesn't make any sense, said John. John, you must understand the importance of context. There will be people who ask you for wisdom, but you must never cross the boundaries without an invitation. A wise man once said, the difference between a pest and a guest is an invitation. You have gained much wisdom while you are here, but most people won't be interested in learning or changing. It is very sad, but you need to be prepared for what you are walking into. If I were the best heart surgeon in the world and my best friend had a heart problem that only I can fix, does that give me permission to do surgery on him? John was puzzled, but eventually said, I guess not. Exactly. I still need permission to perform the surgery. Even though you are equipped with life-changing wisdom that could transform lives, you must not share it without an invitation. Most people just want to be heard and loved. They don't want your wisdom, and that's okay. Sometimes you can actually become the greatest impediment for other people to grow when you try and force things on them. In time, if they see you model it, they will probably start to ask. I have never seen this ancient wisdom fail to come true. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. But I'll share something with you I've never shared with you before. I don't ask your permission to share wisdom with you because of the nature and context of our relationship. However, with my friends and family, I always ask, would you like my opinion, or do you just need to be heard and want me to listen? Sometimes this annoys them, and just because I could help, it sure doesn't mean they need it. Want it? Okay, I'm going to read that again. Sometimes it annoys them, and just because I could help, I must make sure they need it, want it, and give their permission. Trust me, John, disregard this advice at your own peril. We get letters from former apprentices all the time, and the biggest challenge they face when they reacclimate back to the real world, said Akira, is this. Thank you, Akira-sensei. I will do my best to always be a guest and never a pest. All right, so you'll notice when I'm coaching and when I'm talking with you, unless we're in the middle of an intense game and I absolutely need to give direction, I will always ask if it's okay if I give you some feedback. And ultimately, I'm doing that because I want your permission to be able to coach you. If I don't have that permission from you, then you're not necessarily going to receive it well. I went through a health journey over the past year or so. I've lost about 60 pounds. I was quite large before. I was up to 255, and I lost all that weight in the time of a year. I also became a certified nutritionist, and I really wanted to share all of that information with my friends and family. I wanted to do that in a very, not necessarily aggressive way, but I know the right way, I suppose, because it worked for me. But what worked for me doesn't necessarily work for everybody else. And so I needed to wait for them to ask me for advice and then make sure that they actually really wanted it. Otherwise, they were just going to hear me, realize how hard it actually was to go through that journey, because it's not easy, and see if it was something that they really truly wanted to buy into. Your friends will be the same. Your family may be the same. The concepts we're learning in this book, not everybody's ready to hear. However, you can surely still live by principles and not by feelings, like we talked about before, and ensure that you're showing them the best possible love and kindness based on their situation, because that's what it's all about. When you show that love, when you show that kindness, when you live by those principles and not by the feelings, you have a much better chance to be able to communicate with them effectively. So I hope you enjoyed those chapters. We're getting close to the end. We'll see you next time. Bye now.